15-year-old twins get pregnant at the same time, but when they discover who the baby's father is, the small town of Havenwood, nestled in the heart of Pennsylvania's Amish country, was a place where time seemed to move a little slower. Horse-drawn buggies shared the roads with modern cars, and the rhythm of life was dictated by the changing seasons and the deeply rooted traditions of the community. The Miller family, while not Amish themselves, were members of a similarly strict, conservative Christian sect known as the River Brethren. They lived on a sprawling farm just outside of town, their lives governed by a rigid set of rules and expectations. Clara and Sarah Miller, identical twins, were 15, with identical cascades of honey blonde hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. Though they looked alike, their personalities differed subtly. Clara was the more introspective, the dreamer, with a love for books and poetry. Sarah was more outgoing, more practical, with a quick wit and a ready smile. But despite their differences, they shared an unbreakable bond, a connection that ran deeper than blood. Their father, Samuel Miller, was a stern, unyielding man, a pillar of the River Brethren community. He believed in hard work, discipline, and unwavering adherence to their faith's traditions. He saw it as his duty to guide his daughters along the righteous path, and that included choosing their husbands. James O'Connell was the boy next door, quite literally. His family's farm bordered the Millers, and he and Clara had been inseparable since childhood. They'd explored the woods together, built forts in the hayloft, and shared their dreams under the vast, starry sky. Their friendship had blossomed into a sweet, innocent romance, a love that felt as natural and inevitable as the changing seasons. But their idyllic world was shattered when Daniel Ebersol entered the picture. Daniel was the son of a wealthy businessman from Lancaster, a man who had made his fortune in construction and real estate. He was considerably older than Clara, in his late 20s, and he possessed a cold, calculating demeanor that sent shivers down Clara's spine. But he was also a member of the River Brethren, and his family was highly respected within the community. The Ebersols had expressed an interest in acquiring a portion of the Miller farm, a prime piece of land that would allow them to expand their business interests. Samuel Miller, facing mounting debts and a struggling harvest, saw the Ebersols' offer as a lifeline. But there was a condition attached, a marriage alliance between Daniel and one of his daughters. Samuel didn't hesitate. He summoned Clara to his study, the room smelling of old leather and pipe tobacco. He informed her, in his usual blunt manner, that she was to marry Daniel Ebersol. Clara was stunned. "But father," she pleaded, I don't love him. I love James." Samuel's face hardened. "Love is a luxury, Clara," he said coldly. "Duty and obedience are what matter. This marriage will secure our family's future. It will secure your future." "But it's not right," Clara cried, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm only 15. You are old enough," Samuel said dismissively. "Many girls in our community marry at your age, and Daniel Ebersol is a good, God-fearing man. He will provide for you." "But what about James?" Samuel's voice rose in anger. "James O'Connell is not of our faith. He is not a suitable match for you. You will forget about him." Clara knew there was no arguing with her father. He was the head of the household. His word was law. But she couldn't bear the thought of marrying Daniel, of spending her life with a man she didn't love. She ran to Sarah, her heart breaking. Sarah held her close, her own eyes filled with tears. "I'll talk to him, Clara," she said fiercely. "I'll make him see reason." But Sarah's pleas were in vain. Samuel was unyielding. He threatened to disown Clara if she disobeyed him, to cast her out of the family and the community. The threat was terrifying. For a young woman raised in the insular world of the River Brethren, being disowned meant being completely alone, cut off from everything she had ever known. Clara, trapped and desperate, saw no way out. She reluctantly agreed to the marriage, her heart heavy with sorrow. The wedding was a somber affair. Clara, dressed in a simple white dress, walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her face pale and drawn. She saw James standing at the back of the church, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and resignation. Their gazes met for a fleeting moment, a silent acknowledgement of the love they were being forced to sacrifice. As she stood beside Daniel, reciting her vows, Clara felt a profound sense of loss. She was marrying a stranger, a man she didn't love, a man who represented everything she was being forced to give up. Her dreams of a future with James, of a life filled with love and laughter, were shattered. She was entering a gilded cage, a life of privilege and comfort, but also a life devoid of genuine happiness. The shadow of tradition had fallen upon her, and she knew, with a chilling certainty, that her life would never be the same. She could only imagine the pain James was feeling. Clara's life as Mrs. Daniel Ebersol was, as she had feared, a gilded cage. Their home, a sprawling, modern farmhouse on the outskirts of Lancaster, was filled with expensive furniture, fine china, and all the modern conveniences, but it lacked warmth, laughter, and love. It felt more like a museum than a home. Daniel was not a cruel man, not in the physical sense. He provided for Clara materially, ensuring she had everything she needed. But he was emotionally distant, cold, and preoccupied with his business. He treated her more like a possession than a wife, a trophy to be displayed at social gatherings and church events. He spoke often of his desire for an heir, a son to carry on the Ebersol name and inherit his business empire. This pressure to conceive added another layer of stress to Clara's already burdened existence. Clara found solace in her memories of James and in the stolen moments they managed to share. They couldn't risk being seen together openly, so they met in secret, carefully orchestrating their encounters to avoid detection. Sometimes they'd meet at the local library, pretending to browse books while whispering to each other in the quiet corners. Other times, they'd meet at the county fair or a community picnic, blending in with the crowds, stealing glances and brief touches whenever they could. These brief encounters were a lifeline for Clara, a reminder of the love she had been forced to give up. But they were also bittersweet, a constant reminder of the life she could have had. Each meeting ended with a painful parting, a renewed sense of loss and despair. One crisp autumn afternoon, they met at a secluded spot by the creek that ran between their family's farms, the same creek where they had played as children. The leaves were turning golden and red, the air filled with the scent of fallen apples. They sat on a fallen log, holding hands, their silence filled with unspoken longing. "I can't bear this, James," Clara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I feel like I'm suffocating." James pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. "I know, Clara," he said softly. "I feel the same. But we have to be strong. We have to find a way to get through this." In that moment of shared despair, their love, suppressed and denied for so long, overwhelmed them. They kissed, a desperate, passionate kiss that was both a reaffirmation of their love and a farewell to the life they could never have. It was a single, reckless act of defiance against the forces that had conspired to keep them apart. Weeks later, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that the child was James's. The timing was undeniable. The realization filled her with a mix of joy and terror. Joy at the prospect of carrying James's child, a tangible symbol of their love. Terror at the consequences, at the scandal that would erupt if the truth were ever revealed. She confided in Sarah, her only confidant. Sarah, though shocked, promised to support her sister, no matter what. They knew they had to be incredibly careful. The secret had to be kept, not only from Daniel and Samuel, but from the entire community. Clara endured the pregnancy with a mixture of hope and fear. She prayed for a healthy child, but she also prayed that the child wouldn't resemble James too closely. She endured Daniel's increasingly demanding and critical behavior, his constant pressure to produce a male heir. When the time came, Clara gave birth to not one, but two beautiful, healthy girls. Twins, just like her and Sarah. She named them Olivia and Emma. Daniel's reaction was a mixture of disappointment and disdain. He had wanted a son, an heir to his business empire. He barely acknowledged the girls, his attention quickly returning to his work. He became even more distant, spending more and more time away from home, ostensibly on business trips. Clara, relieved that Daniel showed little interest in the girls, devoted herself to raising them. She showered them with love and affection, determined to give them the happy childhood she had been denied. She saw James in their eyes, in their smiles, in their gentle nature. It was a bittersweet reminder of her lost love, but also a source of immense comfort and strength. As the years passed, Daniel's absences became longer and more frequent. He'd send money, but he rarely visited. Clara eventually hired a private investigator, a discreet, professional woman who specialized in tracking down missing persons. The investigator's report confirmed Clara's worst fears. Daniel had started a new life in Ohio. He had married another woman, a younger woman, and they had a son. He had completely abandoned Clara and his daughters, leaving them to fend for themselves. Clara was devastated, but not surprised. She had long suspected that Daniel was not the man he pretended to be. The betrayal cut deep, but she refused to let it break her. She had her daughters to live for. She had to be strong for them. She worked hard at the farm, helped by the twins and some hired hands. She made ends meet. Years passed, and the girls grew to resemble their mother and therefore their father. One day, Clara started feeling sharp chest pains. The local doctor did not like what he saw. After a battery of tests, Clara was diagnosed with a serious heart condition. The prognosis was not good. The doctor told her she needed to prepare for the inevitable. Clara knew she couldn't leave her daughters without revealing the truth about their parentage. She couldn't bear the thought of them growing up believing that Daniel Ebersol was their father, a man who had abandoned them without a second thought. She decided to write a letter to James, a letter that would reveal everything. She poured out her heart in the letter, confessing her enduring love for him, revealing the truth about Olivia and Emma, and begging him to watch over them after she was gone. She entrusted the letter to Mrs. Davis, her loyal housekeeper, a kind, elderly woman who had been with the family for many years. Mrs. Davis had witnessed Clara's suffering firsthand, and she had always suspected the truth about the girl's parentage. "Mrs. Davis," Clara said, her voice weak but firm, "I want you to promise me something. After I'm gone, you must give this letter to James O'Connell. No one else. Only him." Mrs. Davis, her eyes filled with tears, took the letter and promised to fulfill Clara's dying wish. Clara's health deteriorated rapidly. She spent her final days surrounded by her daughters, cherishing every moment. She told them stories of her childhood, of her friendship with James, carefully omitting the romantic details. She instilled in them the values of kindness, compassion, and resilience. One peaceful spring morning, Clara passed away in her sleep, her daughters holding her hands. Her death was a profound loss for Olivia and Emma, but they were strong, resilient young women, just like their mother. They were determined to honor her memory by living their lives to the fullest. But they had no idea the secret their mother had kept, the secret that was about to change their lives forever. The future, once a blank canvas of possibilities, was now overshadowed by a past they never knew existed. Clara's passing left a void in the lives of Olivia and Emma that seemed impossible to fill. They had been incredibly close to their mother, and her absence was felt in every corner of the farmhouse, in every quiet moment, in every shared glance. They clung to each other, drawing strength from their sisterly bond, determined to navigate their grief and face the future together. The farmhouse, once filled with Clara's gentle presence, now felt empty and echoing. The familiar routines, tending the garden, preparing meals, reading together in the evenings, were now tinged with sadness, constant reminders of their loss. They tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but the weight of their grief was heavy. Mrs. Davis, the housekeeper, remained a steadfast presence in their lives. She had been more than just an employee to Clara. She had been a friend, a confidant, almost a second mother to the girls. She continued to care for Olivia and Emma, providing them with practical support and emotional comfort. She knew the secret Clara had entrusted to her, and she watched the girls with a mixture of sadness and concern, knowing that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't imagine. Meanwhile, James O'Connell lived a quiet, solitary life on his family farm. He had never married, his heart forever belonging to Clara. He had watched her from afar, his love for her undiminished by time or circumstance. He had seen her marry Daniel Ebersol, witnessed her unhappiness, and felt a profound sense of helplessness. He had known, instinctively, that something was wrong, that Clara was not living the life she deserved. He had often wondered about Olivia and Emma, the beautiful twin daughters who bore a striking resemblance to Clara, and, though he didn't know it, to himself. He had seen them around town, at the farmer's market, at the county fair, and he had felt a strange, inexplicable connection to them, a pull that he couldn't quite understand. 1 week after Clara's funeral, Mrs. Davis, fulfilling her promise, made the difficult journey to the O'Connell farm. She found James working in his barn, his hands calloused from years of hard labor, his face weathered by the sun and wind. He looked up, surprised to see her. "Mrs. Davis," he said, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "What brings you here?" Mrs. Davis hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. She held out the sealed envelope, its paper yellowed with age. Clara wanted you to have this," she said, her voice choked with emotion. After she was gone, James took the letter, his heart pounding in his chest. He recognized Clara's handwriting instantly. He looked at Mrs. Davis, his eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and hope. Is she? He began, unable to finish the sentence. Mrs. Davis nodded subtly. She passed a week ago, she said softly. Peacefully, in her sleep. Her daughters were with her. James felt a wave of grief wash over him, so intense it almost brought him to his knees. He had always known, deep down, that he would never truly be with Clara, but the finality of her death was a blow he hadn't been prepared for. He excused himself, retreating into the quiet solitude of his farmhouse. He sat at his kitchen table, the letter clutched in his hand. He stared at it for a long time, his mind racing, his heart aching. He finally, carefully, opened the envelope and began to read. Clara's words poured out onto the page, a torrent of love, regret, and confession. She told him everything: her forced marriage to Daniel, her enduring love for James, the secret she had kept for so many years. She revealed that Olivia and Emma were his daughters, the product of their one desperate act of love. James read the letter over and over again, his tears blurring the ink. He was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions: shock, disbelief, joy, sorrow, and a profound sense of loss. He had two daughters, two beautiful, grown-up daughters he had never known. He had missed their entire lives, their first steps, their first words, their school plays, their graduations. He thought of Clara, of her courage, her resilience, her unwavering love. He realized the immense burden she had carried all those years, the secret she had kept to protect her daughters. He felt a surge of anger towards Samuel Miller for forcing Clara into a loveless marriage, and towards Daniel Ebersol for abandoning her and their children. But amidst the grief and anger, there was also a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. He had two daughters. He had a chance to be a part of their lives, to make up for lost time. But Clara's letter also contained a plea. She begged him not to reveal the truth to Olivia and Emma, fearing it would cause them pain and confusion. She asked him to watch over them, to protect them, to be a presence in their lives without revealing his true identity. James wrestled with this decision. He longed to tell them the truth, to embrace them as his daughters, to share the love he had for their mother. But he also understood Clara's concerns. He knew that revealing the truth could shatter their world, could damage their relationship with each other and with the memory of their mother. He decided to honor Clara's wish. He would be there for Olivia and Emma, but he would do so discreetly, from a distance. He would be their guardian angel, their silent protector. He started small. He became a regular customer at the small diner where Olivia and Emma worked as waitresses. He'd sit at a corner booth, observing them, listening to their conversations, learning about their lives. He noticed their kindness, their work ethic, and their close bond. He volunteered at the local community center, where Olivia and Emma occasionally helped out with events. He'd find ways to interact with them casually, offering a helping hand, a kind word, a supportive smile. He even started making anonymous donations to a local scholarship fund, specifically earmarked for young women from the Havenwood area. He knew that Olivia and Emma dreamed of going to college, but they lacked the financial resources. He did all of this subtly, carefully, making sure they never suspected his true identity. He was content to be a silent presence in their lives, a guardian angel watching over them from afar. He found a measure of peace in this, a way to honor Clara's memory and to connect with the daughters he had never known. He had no idea, however, that his carefully constructed world was about to be shattered, that a new tragedy was looming on the horizon, a tragedy that would test his resolve and force him to make an impossible choice. The quiet life he had built was about to be upended by a storm of deceit and heartbreak, a storm he could never have anticipated. The diner, the cozy corner, was a Havenwood staple, known for its hearty breakfasts, homemade pies, and friendly atmosphere. Olivia and Emma had worked there since graduating high school, juggling shifts between them to cover the bills and keep the farmhouse running. They were popular with the regulars, their bright smiles and genuine warmth a welcome sight in the small town. James became one of those regulars. He'd arrive every Tuesday and Thursday morning, always choosing the same corner booth, the one that offered a clear view of the counter where Olivia and Emma worked. He'd order the same breakfast, 2 eggs over easy, bacon, toast, and coffee, and he'd linger over his meal, observing the sisters as they interacted with customers. Their movements graceful and efficient, their laughter infectious. He learned their routines, their preferences, their dreams. Olivia, the more reserved of the two, had a passion for art, sketching in a small notebook during her breaks. Emma, the more outgoing one, dreamed of traveling the world, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she talked about faraway places. James listened, his heart aching with a mixture of pride and longing. He yearned to tell them the truth, to embrace them as his daughters, to share in their joys and sorrows. But he held back, bound by his promise to Clara. He contented himself with small gestures of kindness, leaving generous tips, offering a word of encouragement, always careful to maintain a respectful distance. At the community center, James volunteered his time, helping with maintenance and repairs. He'd often find himself working alongside Olivia and Emma, who volunteered there whenever they could. He'd offer to carry heavy boxes, fix leaky faucets, or paint walls, always finding ways to be near them without being intrusive. He'd engage them in casual conversations, asking about their day, their interests, their aspirations. He learned about their struggles, their hopes, their fears. He saw their resilience, their determination, their unwavering love for each other. He noticed the small things: Olivia's habit of biting her lip when she was concentrating, Emma's infectious laugh that could light up a room. He saw glimpses of Clara in their features, in their mannerisms, in their spirit. It was both a source of profound joy and a poignant reminder of his loss. One day, while helping Olivia organize supplies in the community center's storage room, James noticed a stack of college applications on a shelf. He picked one up, pretending to examine it. Thinking about going to college, he asked casually. Olivia sighed. I wish, she said. I've always dreamed of studying art, but it's just not realistic. We can barely afford to keep the farm running. James felt a pang of guilt. He knew he could easily help them financially, but he couldn't do so openly without raising suspicion. He decided to find a way to help them anonymously. He contacted a lawyer friend in Lancaster, a man he trusted implicitly. He explained the situation, carefully omitting the details of his relationship to Olivia and Emma. He asked the lawyer to establish a scholarship fund, specifically for young women from the Havenwood area who were pursuing higher education. He deposited a substantial amount of money into the fund, enough to cover the full tuition and living expenses for both Olivia and Emma. He instructed the lawyer to make the scholarships anonymous, ensuring that the recipients would never know the source of the funding. He wanted to give them the opportunity to pursue their dreams, without any strings attached, without any obligation to him. A few weeks later, Olivia and Emma received letters informing them that they had been awarded full scholarships to the college of their choice. They were overjoyed, their dreams suddenly within reach. They had no idea who their benefactor was, but they were filled with gratitude and a renewed sense of hope. James watched from afar, his heart swelling with pride and happiness. He had kept his promise to Clara. He was watching over his daughters, protecting them, helping them, without revealing his true identity. He had found a way to be a part of their lives, a silent, supportive presence. He continued his routine, visiting the diner, volunteering at the community center, finding small ways to connect with Olivia and Emma. He felt a sense of peace, a sense of purpose that he hadn't felt in years. He was fulfilling his promise to Clara, honoring her memory, and nurturing the bond with his daughters, even if they didn't know it. But this peaceful interlude was about to be shattered. A new character was about to enter their lives, a man named Liam, who would bring with him a wave of deceit and tragedy, a storm that would threaten to destroy everything James had worked so hard to protect. The quiet, carefully constructed world he had built was about to crumble, forcing him to confront a darkness he had never imagined. The calm before the storm was over, and James was about to face the greatest challenge of his life. Liam O'Connell arrived in Havenwood like a summer breeze, charming, handsome, and seemingly full of good intentions. He claimed to be a distant relative of James, a cousin from Ireland who was traveling through America, exploring his family's roots. He had a disarming smile, a quick wit, and an easygoing manner that instantly put people at ease. He first encountered Olivia at the community center, where he had ostensibly come to volunteer. He helped her carry a heavy box of art supplies, striking up a conversation about her sketches. He praised her talent, flattering her with his attention and his seemingly genuine interest in her work. Olivia, who was naturally reserved and somewhat shy, found herself drawn to Liam's warmth and charm. He seemed to understand her, to appreciate her artistic aspirations. He made her feel seen, valued, and special. They began spending more time together, going for walks, having coffee, sharing their dreams and fears. Meanwhile, Liam had also encountered Emma at the diner. He became a regular customer, always choosing a table in her section. He flirted with her outrageously, complimenting her smile, her energy, her infectious laughter. He told her stories of his travels, painting a picture of a life filled with adventure and excitement. Emma, who was more outgoing and adventurous than her sister, was captivated by Liam's stories and his apparent worldliness. She found herself drawn to his confidence and his easy charm. They, too, began spending time together, going for drives, attending local events, sharing intimate conversations. Liam was careful to keep his relationships with Olivia and Emma separate. He'd meet Olivia during the day, volunteering at the community center or taking her to art galleries in nearby towns. He'd meet Emma in the evenings, taking her to dinner, to the movies, or to local bars. He was a master of deception, weaving a web of lies and half-truths to keep the sisters from discovering his double life. He told them both that he was looking for a serious relationship, that he was tired of traveling and wanted to settle down. He spoke of a future filled with love, family, and happiness. Both Olivia and Emma, unaware of each other's involvement with Liam, fell deeply in love with him. They believed they had finally found the man of their dreams, the partner they had been searching for. They confided in each other about their happiness, but they carefully avoided mentioning Liam's name, each fearing that their sister might not approve of their new relationship. The sisters' secrecy was not born out of malice or jealousy. It was a result of their deep bond, their desire to protect each other's feelings. They had always shared everything, but this felt different, too precious, too fragile to expose to the scrutiny of the outside world. As the relationships progressed, both Olivia and Emma became pregnant. They were initially overjoyed, believing that their pregnancies were a symbol of their love for Liam, a sign of their commitment to each other. They dreamed of starting families with him, of creating the loving, stable home they had longed for. They each decided, independently, to tell Liam about their pregnancies. They planned romantic dinners, carefully choosing their words, their hearts filled with hope and anticipation. But Liam's reaction was not what they expected. He feigned surprise, then concern, then a carefully crafted display of affection. He told each sister, separately, that he loved her, that he wanted to be with her, but that he needed time to process the news. He promised to support them, to help them through the pregnancy, to build a future together. But his words were empty, his promises hollow. He had no intention of being a father, of being tied down to either sister. He had been playing a game, a cruel, selfish game, and now he was trapped. He began to plot his escape. He researched poisons online, looking for something that was slow-acting, undetectable, and would mimic the symptoms of a natural illness. He found what he was looking for, a rare, toxic plant extract that could be easily administered in small doses, causing gradual organ failure. He obtained the poison through illicit means, contacting a shady online vendor who specialized in rare and dangerous substances. He carefully planned his next moves, his mind devoid of empathy or remorse. He began to subtly poison both Olivia and Emma, adding small doses of the extract to their food and drinks whenever he had the opportunity. He maintained his facade of concern, playing the role of the supportive boyfriend, while secretly watching them deteriorate. He was careful, methodical, and always covered his tracks. Meanwhile, across the country, Sarah, now happily married and expecting her first child, had an unexplainable and uneasy feeling. She knew that Liam visited the sisters and had dinner. She had an uneasy feeling about him. Sarah had never met Liam. She was far away, but she knew her sisters. She decided she would go and visit as soon as she could, but it would prove to be too late. The poison was already taking its toll. The sisters were in mortal danger, unaware of the deadly betrayal that was unfolding. Their dreams of love and family were about to be shattered, their lives tragically cut short by the man they had trusted with their hearts. James, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy, continued his quiet routine, unaware that the daughters he had vowed to protect were slipping away from him, victims of a cruel and heartless deception. Time was running out, and he had no idea